I'm told it's 7:30, so we'll make a start. It's quite a lengthy looking agenda this evening. Welcome to all councillors and to the members of the public, from whom we will be hearing at least one of them shortly. First item on tonight's agenda is apologies for absence. Presumably the same as for a previous meeting.
Councillor Davis and
Councillor
Councillor
Davis.
Dubois.
Councillor Dubois.
Sorry? Can do, yes, yeah.
And do we accept their apologies? Yep. Right, declarations of interest, the usual, starting with any disclosable pecuniary interests. Any other interests? Requests for dispensation. Gifts or hospitality accepted over the value of £50. Inappropriate gifts of hospitality. That moves us on to two lots of minutes. First was for the ordinary full council meeting held on Tuesday the 18th of July. We had slightly reduced numbers. Both myself and the deputy mayor were away. Councillor Wade chaired the meeting in our absence, for which I'm grateful. Present were Councillors Wade, Whitehold, Hutton, Arnold, Chesser and Davis. The minutes have been circulated. May I sign those as a true record? First, Councillor Whitehold. So Councillor Wade. We don't normally have a meeting in August. And we didn't have one, but we did have an extra one on the 4th of September. Present at that one were myself, Councillor Clark, Councillor Wade, Councillor Reichhold, Councillor Hutton, Councillor Shura, Councillor Jones and Councillor Davis, and the minutes of that have been circulated. They were very short. I have a proposal for those calls, please. Councillor Shura, seconded. Mr. Reichhold, all those in favour? So the next item is public participation from interested parties. Councillor David Wood is with us because of the item 237103, to consider a request to find a volunteer to take over the development of a cycle network in Amble. He very kindly agreed to come along and just talk to us about what he's been doing, very briefly no doubt what he's not doing it anymore, his efforts to get somebody else and what that somebody else would be doing. David, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Russell Blackbrand video channel. Yes, I've been involved with cycleways in Amble for over 10 years, and I said I was going to withdraw gracefully, and Councillor Chapel asked if I could come along and say what had happened and say what I thought the council could usefully do going forward. So you've had a couple of sheets, I think, circulated beforehand, so I'm just going to talk briefly to that. And in terms of what's happened over the last 11 or so years, it started with Amble on Your Bike in 2012, which was a Transition Amble project. We came up with the idea of establishing a cycle network within the town. Progressed with fits and starts over the subsequent years. There was a Sustrans report survey done in 2014. Northamptonshire Highways did a detailed, a provisional plan for putting a cycleway down Platform Road in 2015, and it was also included in the neighbourhood plan. There was a bit of a hiatus, and then in 2019, I think we all assumed that momentum had been established and it was carrying on. But in 2019, we discovered that there was £100,000 plus which had been allocated to us, the council, town, under 106 funding. And if we didn't spend it within a year or so, it had to be given back with interest. So Transition Amble looked at all the material that had been done and prioritised what we thought should be taken forward, and that was one of the items that was on the list and sent to you. It was a report we did, about 7 or 8 pages. And from that we developed an overview of what we thought the cycleways in Amble would look like. So that, if you like, is sort of a vision of what we think it could be. We then got involved with implementing the crossing over by the George, so that the money was spent, although I think it's about 3,000 left. So briefly, that's what's happened over the last 10 plus years. To go forward, what do I think Amble Town Council can usefully do? One is recognise that if there isn't attention given to it going forward, nothing's going to happen. We saw that between 2015 and 2019. Encourage residents to hold their hand up and get involved. And I think if you can get people in the town to do it, obviously it's many hands make light work. It's much easier. I would advocate that you appointed somebody within your body to be a representative of the cycle network, to do 3 things. One, to highlight relevant planning applications that go through, where the developer can be asked to make a contribution, or where the plans can be adjusted to accommodate the cycleways. Secondly, to liaise with residents and encourage support and action. And thirdly, I've set out 5 priorities of what I think should be done first in order of action. So you've got a to-do list if you like. So I said I'd be quick. That's it. Over to you to decide what, if anything, you want to do, and if there are any questions, I will try and answer.
Thank you very much. First of all, do we have any questions for David? If not, it's tempting to take this item slightly out of sequence so that it follows naturally on. The request is to find a volunteer to take over the development of this project, which I suspect is going to be one of those kind of never-ending Forth Bridge type projects, because as Amble develops, the need for expanding the cycle network is going to continue. We've got these 2 major developments already underway. We've got the development of Stokewell Road, where they're still searching for their planning permission, and we're well aware of the prospect of further significant developments coming forward. We have later on in our agenda, of course, our transport study report as well. The Transport Working Group could, I suppose, become involved in this, but ideally to get some support from within the community would be great. The trouble is, I know that David's been out there in the community, and he described it to me minutes ago as a bit like grabbing soap, because you think you might have got it and slipped into your hands again. But of course, we all have a wide network of people. We may have a cycle enthusiast amongst our friends and acquaintances who just might be inspired to take it on. And if we can't fill a void at the minute, that's not to say we couldn't do it at some point, but it would be a shame to lose momentum. So, moment of thoughts, volunteers, what's the happen? Brave raising your hand.
Well, David knows that I am the nominated coordination between Town Council and Transition Amber. So I have already been engaging with David and trying to communicate what the work he's been doing and trying to be able to pass any information that relevance through to Transition Amber in general and cycle people in particular. And I'm perfectly happy to keep on doing that. I don't think that precludes anyone else who's got a burning passion for bicycles to jump up and say they'll do it too. But I'm perfectly happy to continue doing what I already do in terms of being a link between this council and Transition Amber.
Which is fine, so long as Transition Amber will have people on the ground doing it. And my impression is that the risk is that that's where the problem lies.
I'm happy to join the party, as it were. We've had this very successful experiment over the summer with electric bikes. There were 5 of us riding side by side today. Little smug group stuff by a cyclist and an electric bike. And the connection with North Northants and the connection with Outspoken in Cambridge might be a way of retweaking a lot of things. So I'm happy to, along with the transport stuff, fold it all together and work on that if that helps. Maybe try and find a normal person to talk to as well.
Yeah, I quite like the idea of involving a normal person.
I've got a couple of people in mind.
Is there any value in, say, like getting the school to do an article in the Amble Chronicle and ask for volunteers that way? Because that's a publication I understand that gets to many homes in Amble, and other cycling enthusiasts might be keen, unless you've already done that sort of
The
thing.
Amber Chronicle haven't done that. I did send an email in advance of this session to the PTAs
Yeah,
of the primary school and the secondary school and
Yeah.
no response. Which is,
well, they might be very interested
Yeah.
in
but
that
certainly the
sort of
Amber
thing.
Chronicle
Yeah.
idea is,
Yeah.
it's worth pursuing if that suits the school's
Well,
agenda.
my neighbour is the person who manages the Amber Chronicle, so I could have a word with her and ask her maybe
Yeah,
if she'd be prepared to contact somebody and
yeah, and I'll,
do a piece
Yeah.
and
I
dig
know
with
how it
any
goes.
volunteers coming.
Well, that sounds like a way of at least spreading the message out into the community. Because although the work that we do here and have done here is valuable, I can't help but feeling that it would be enhanced by trying to bring in some people from outside as well. But it doesn't sound as if it's in danger of disappearing. Councillor Hutton's going to remain involved. Councillor Clark's volunteered. Councillor Ray's idea is a good one. As chair of planning, I also try and make sure that we always keep cycleways as part of our thinking when we're looking at applications, particularly significant ones.
Is it just another question? Sorry.
Councillor Fuller.
Have you put this on Love Amble? I think it would be interesting. I think that would be, well, trying to promote Love Amble as a sort of place that people go to about anything to do with Amble.
Right.
So I think that would be a useful place to put it on, because this is interesting and informative, and I think if you're looking for people, then it may, I mean, it's like the Chronicle, you don't know.
Yeah.
But the more you spread it out, the more chance you have.
Yeah.
That's
Comms, take that on board.
But it's just asking about.
we get something.
Anybody else got any thoughts on,
Sorry.
anybody else got any thoughts on this issue?
The more we push it, the better.
Yeah, I think so. I think the point to make is, I'm sure my colleagues and myself would be saying we understand what the issue is, but we also recognise the good work that's been done so far. So can I just thank you for what you've achieved as in your time. So thank you very much.
I think it clearly should be noted, David's put a huge amount of work into this over a number of years, so if you're right, it's recorded for me in the minutes. The council's thanks to him.
Yeah.
And thank you again for coming along tonight. It was a good evening. Consideration of requests from interested parties, actually I've said that. Are there any other people about to speak that I was unaware of? Consideration of requests.
Just one question. Every time I've been here, in the Wet Management Club, there have been very, very few. How well do we advertise the opportunity for groups to come and listen and speak? Is that something we should announce more or publicise more? Because with all due respect, we see the same people quite often, which is great. Can we not expand to see if there are other people interested in going on?
It's on the agenda. The agenda is published.
Now.
Well, hopefully people do, because we do publish it so members of the
Yes.
public can read it, and that's their opportunity to see if there's anything on there that they want to come and speak about.
I don't think that's
Can I just say something? I mean, having been here for a while, I understand that there is a sort of lack of people coming, but on certain issues, there are lots of people coming. And so I think people are aware of the agenda. If they've got a point to make, they know how to do it. But again, it could be advertised a bit more. But I think we have had in the past meetings with quite a few people. Good. Particularly over, we've even had to have one in the QDH over some of the contentious issues that are going on in the town. So people know and are willing to speak when they've got something to say.
It's probably true for some people.
3 people are watching on YouTube as well.
Excellent.
Thank you to our viewers.
Wait.
Right. I think we can move on, well, we would move on to North Northampton Council, except that we're not having here, so unless you've given us any message. We'll move on to the town matters, first of which is to consider taking part in the D-Day 80 commemoration. Now, there's been some paperwork circulated with your meeting papers for that. Anybody any thoughts on what we could or should be doing? Councillor Schiller.
I think we should be seen to try and do something. Having read this very long document, it's not entirely clear what they want people to do. It seems the majority seems to be suggesting that we light a beacon. I'm not even sure if we have a beacon.
We don't.
Who
Yeah,
is
I have
the
one.
one that sits between Blackpool and Oundle? It's technically in Blackpool Parish.
Right.
And that's
It's
joint
joint
management
management.
with that council.
Maybe we should do something joint with them. Who knows?
I've got a meeting with Blackpool Parish
A
Council.
lot of it
tomorrow
seems
night.
to be about lighting beacons, and I wasn't sure that we had one.
And again,
I spoke to Morag today. She's contacted Alconbury and a few other places to see if they want to do something, a joint venture. So she is looking into it as well to see what we can do. She hasn't had anything back yet. But I noticed there's a poem that could be read at school. So I don't know whether we can sort of send that document to the schools. I don't know if they've received it or not.
But I assume they've contacted schools independently.
Well, I'm assuming they
of
have,
us.
yeah, but just to make sure we can send it. And there is a proclamation, but it talks about town criers reading that, and we haven't.
Yeah, well, that's a
Yeah.
But that's kind of come and gone because again, I may have misread the document, but there's a list of towns where the town crier is going to do this in the document, and there's one in the whole county.
Yeah, Corby, yeah.
Towns that have town criers.
Yeah, I think they must be registered, so that's why they're in the document.
I've been in touch with the CCF at school. Andrew's happy to support whatever we might want to do, and so it might be worth having a chat with lots of different people. The only problem, of course, is it's the middle of the exam season and the school week, which is problematic. But it might be worth seeing if the British Legion, if their forces in town ever want to get together and maybe talk about doing a joint ceremony at the Blackpool Beacon or something like that.
I mean, it sounds like there is some enthusiasm to see what we can do. I think it would be an event worth marking. I can certainly talk to our neighbouring parish.
Yeah.
If you can follow up with CCF. We're in touch with the Royal British Legion about various things anyway, all of which not. So we can talk to them as well. It would be nice to think we could put together some sort of a formal event.
Here.
Right, let's move on. Next one is to consider a request to ask NNC to install a dog waste bin on Fletton Field. It's actually a bit like a no-brainer, but.
Well, a bin was installed, and I think that was prior to the event that was held on Fletton Field.
Yeah.
And it was heavily used, but because it hadn't been agreed with NNC, they wouldn't empty it. So it was their suggestion that, and we have applied before to NNC for a bin, and they turned us down. So I thought they did say we could try again and apply again and see if they would agree.
Perhaps we could point out how well used it was when we had a function, and we'll be having lots more on Fletton Field.
I think the issue is with the bin that was positioned, I thought was only temporarily for the event, is nowhere near the road. So I don't think NNC would be very keen to service a bin into the middle of a field.
No, it would be on the end.
We need to ask one on the entry.
Yeah.
Can we explore that a bit further?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, we'll follow that one up. It seems to me that Fletton Field is going to need that facility.
Most definitely.
We dealt with the next one already, which was the volunteer cycle network. So, Councillor Rycold, update regarding Lakeside Animals Medical Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the Town Council's meeting on 17th July, we agreed that I would continue to maintain communications with the Animal Medical Practice and with the NHS Northamptonshire Integrated Commissioning Board. On 8th September, I met Jessica Borden, the Chief Executive of the Lakeside Healthcare Group as a whole, who of course owned the practice, and Dr. Sabina Leeson at the practice. Miss Borden and Dr. Leeson informed me that the animal practice are now up to strength and that they are confident that they are coping with patients' needs. Specifically, the animal practice now had on strength 4 GP partners, 1 salaried GP retiring soon but to be replaced by a GP partner from outside, 1 advanced nurse practitioner, 1 community nurse, 3 practice nurses, and 3 healthcare assistants. Yvonne Higgins, a senior officer member of the NHS Northamptonshire Integrated Commissioning Board, who earlier this year took over Northants from the NHS Peterborough CCG, sent me on 19th July a clear and detailed letter setting out when the ICB would be able to provide funding from its resources and from any Section 106 development contributions to allow for added demands on the practice from population increases arising from the 2 developments. For the Cotterstock Road site, ICB funding will be released on occupation of the 50th house, expected in January 2024. For the St Christopher's Drive site, where building is not yet started, after the occupation of the first building, Miss Borden keeps in contact with Yvonne Higgins at the ICB. When we're not yet there, the animal population demands on the practice do increase significantly. The practice building will need to be expanded upwards, but we're not there yet. That completes my report.
Well, thank you, Councillor Rycold. Any questions that anybody has for Councillor Rycold on what he's just raised?
Not so much a question, a comment really. In terms of the practice stating that needs are being met, but often anecdotal evidence via the patient participation group would say otherwise. So I'm wondering if there's any value in speaking with them in some capacity, because they are more the ear on the ground. And I used to be part of that, so I know how people go to them when they've got issues with the practice. And Morag is one of those. She might be a good person to speak to, just to get some kind of other feedback. Just rather than take the word of, not what I'm saying that they're not.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't quite hear you. Who are you suggesting that we liaise with?
The patient participation group, it's known as PPG.
Patient participation.
Yeah, and one of our own staff here is a member, and she might be able to give some feedback.
Which of our staff members?
More.
Morag. Yes. Right. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Can we agree that I contact Morag and put this to her, invite her to take this initiative forward?
Seems to make sense. Councillor Fuller.
It's another observation. They're not very good at communicating. That's the next one.
Oh.
So, for example, it's just a personal issue, but it shows the issue we have. So, in August, we had a travel nurse at the GP who's no longer existing there, and there's no information about withdrawing that service. So I managed to get an injection to go to Jordan in August. My son in September had to pay £320 on injections that would have been free because the travel nurse no longer is at Lakeside. Fair enough, but there was no warning. It happened. Nobody knew. Confusion, and this is the issue that they need to wake up and be more communicative. This is not. This is just talking in general. That was poor to find out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm willing to put that in the nicest possible way to Jessica Ball.
Yeah.
She's the chief exec, so she can give orders, and she's obeyed. And she will also let us know if there are any difficulties where we could add support for her to obtain what support she needs externally.
Well, one thing we can, of course, offer is that we have a number of media outlets of our own.
Yes, so we can.
If the cemetery would only give us news updates, we could put it out there.
Yeah.
As Councillor Fuller says, we never know. We don't know. I'm pretty sure the rest of the town doesn't know either. So if they could be encouraged to pass it to us, the comms group will make sure that information that needs to get out to the public is disseminated as widely as we can do it. I spot a hand at the back of the room. I'll make an exception. I can close the meeting temporarily to allow you to speak.
Thank you. As a resident of the town or somebody who uses the surgery, I would say the service you get is abysmal. However, trying to be practical and pragmatic on the question I would ask, I hear that there are 4 or 5 GPs currently at the surgery. I understand that in 1972 there were also 4 GPs. So it would be interesting to ask the question, in light of the increase in population that has taken place over the last 50 years, how has the number of GPs increased and how will it increase going forward?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, frankly, that is a delicate area, I think, effectively, involving really evolution and changes as to what nurses were allowed to do way back and what nurses are fully qualified and able to do now. I would suggest, through Mr. Mayor, that we leave it on that basis, and so long as it works, we accept it, because to attempt to enter into this area now, I think, would not be to our good. But if in fact, though, I've been asked to repeat my report for the Advertiser, which will be published in November, is it? that is likely to bring reactions from our wider public, which would give us a basis for reasoned, frank and fair discussions with Miss Borden and Dr. Leeson.
That's all right.
I think, just from the conscript's perspective, whilst we should be happy to support any communications from the surgery, it's not up to us to be seen as the initiator. So they should be doing it themselves, and we should be passing it on or sharing it or however we do it.
Facilitating.
But it's not our responsibility to communicate on behalf of the surgery. We have no jurisdiction in that area.
No, I understand that. It's just that if they pass information on and say, would you be so kind as to, we could do it.
And of course,
We are seen, of course we do, but if we're seen as the only outlet for them, we're standing in their stead. And I've been just reluctant to do that.
Okay, take that point on board. Perhaps we could stress that we don't envisage that as being the only way in which they should be communicated.
Martha, we live in a free society, and we should work together.
Correct.
Councillor Howard.
Can I just make an observation? I mean, you've only got to go onto social media to see there's a significant number of people who are very unhappy with the see. So the fact that the response to Councillor Radcliffe seems to be that we don't have any problems with police staff and everything's hunky-dory is just laughably incorrect. It's just not, doesn't reflect the reality of what people in Amberley experience. I drive for Volunteer Action. I drive people every week to call people blood tests that they used to have in the ambulance surgery. And every time I do it, they complain.
That's a big one.
That's one very small area, but you're right. We all know somebody who's had to do that. Well, it's an ongoing dialogue, but it's better to be having a dialogue than not. So, Councillor Radcliffe.
Just, I don't think we should be sending a message that says we've been told everything's fine, because we're all silly.
Take that on board. Right, I think we better move on because we could spend the entire night talking about the health provision around it, but since we're only not quite halfway through this agenda, we better press on. The next item is actually my report. Sorry it didn't come out with everything else. I had actually drafted it beforehand, but then forgot to send it to Emma, so I ended up circulating it myself. The only thing I'll add to it is that there had been a plan to start this evening with a presentation of the pennant to the Royal British Legion. Remember, we talked about trying to do something to celebrate their 100 years. Cut a long story sideways, they ended up with the pennant before that, and this evening's event kind of disappeared. But literally, talking to Emma tonight, I think there is now prospect of an event in November.
Yeah, on the 6th of November, and they have invited all councillors. I don't know the exact timings, and they haven't confirmed their booking, but that's the suggestion.
More news to come, but if it's an invitation to all of us, then I hope that we can support it reasonably well. Clark's report has also been circulated, and is there anything you want to draw specifically to our attention, or any questions for Emma?
Not really. I mean, all the appraisals took place in August, and I have just put a little bit on there about my holiday, just to prepare you all for when I'm away in October, because it's at the time I should be away when the agenda needs to be published, and obviously the week before. So I should set up a folder, and obviously if you've got any items to let Lisa know, but also if you've got a report that you've written, you will be able to upload it into that folder directly.
Sorry, Councillor Wade.
A number of questions, actually. I see, and I'm pleased to see that we've had the staff have had some counter-terrorism training. It's a blunt statement. Is there anything we should be aware of? You said you had it, but I don't see any action or any communication.
I've had it, and we're going to roll it out to the rest of the staff before the Christmas market. We were told when we uploaded all of our documents to NNC and the police for the food festival that this would be something that we would need to consider. It's about awareness. It's only a 40 odd minute online course that you look at, and it just gives you examples of, in an event, the sort of things that you need to be looking out for.
So our question was, is there anything the councillors need to know, or is it all contained within staff?
There's no reason why you don't need to know. I wouldn't suggest you need to do the course, but you could certainly have a look at some of the information that I've got, if you wanted to.
And will that be included within the emergency plan?
Yes, I've got a document that's going to be included that we will be taking references from as part of our risk assessment.
Excellent. And next question is, you stated here on the 25th of August, e-bike return to spoken up to another trial period. And so what happens next?
Sorry?
Is there- You said that you returned the e-bikes to outspoken after trial period. There's no indication of what happens next. You just give it back.
I don't know what happens next.
There's no other paper in the agenda. So as far as I can see from reading this, it's finished. What?
The trial was offered to us and lost residents and elsewhere by North Norfolk Council. The trial finished, it finishes on Friday. What they're going to do with the bikes, they haven't decided. So the people that have bikes at the moment, including me, have had them extended for another month. They produced a legacy document as to whether they roll the trial on, get rid of the bikes, do something else. It's in the hands of Northport hands. Who knows what's going to happen?
So where I read this is that's it as far as we're concerned. The trial is finished. We're doing no more unless North has to do something.
No, I think we should consider what we decide want to do in terms of having rights for vehicles, etc. But this was to allow individuals to ride bikes and look at bikes as much as anything else.
So that's closed, okay.
So, well, not the matter's not closed, but for example, I made inquiries with Outspoken recently about their e-cargo bike scheme, which they run in Cambridge. So you can borrow a cargo bike for a few days as a company, which sounds lovely. We would probably need to find £2,000-3,000 a month to run it. Which sounds like quite a lot of money.
Yes.
Exactly. So I haven't brought that forward yet, but we'll see what NNC come up with their next week.
For the ignorant amongst what is a cargo bike?
It's a bike that you, instead of driving a van,
Yeah.
you have a big long bit at the front, and you put stuff in that and cycle around it, and it's got an electric motor.
So go back to the 1920s. Oh, it's got an electric motor, so it's not different.
So you can be as lazy as I am at the moment. But until NNC, if NNC, they would like to work with us on lots of things, but at the moment the ball's in their court. And it's their ball and it's their court.
I've just said that we weren't offered an extra month. We just had to take ours back after the month.
Well, that's because you were part of the August trial. So it wasn't a choice. And that's only because they're thinking on their feet this week. It's been fun.
Thank you for the update. Anything else, Councillor Wynne? Anybody else? In which case, let's move on. Next item, to consider the government consultation on the disability action plan. Anybody's
So
specific?
it's Councillor Rycold.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a government white paper. In fact, actually, led by the Minister of State with responsibility at DWP for services for people with disabilities, who coincidentally is our constituency MP, the young Tom Pursglove. The government have published this consultation called the Disability Action Plan, seeking comments and views with a view to working out firm proposals, in other words, what they will do in the light of the consideration of responses, to improve inclusion for disabled people, adults and children, in access to elected office, playground accessibility, emergency planning and resilience work, effectively very well specialised, but nevertheless, and of course, climate adaptations and mitigations. Right. There's a closing date for responses, 6th October 2023, so all a reasonable time. Anyone may respond, either as an individual or as a corporate body. Now, responses are online, the website is given here. When I first read this, I wondered whether it would be sensible for us to consider and decide whether we set up a small working party and agree a town council response. Since then, with respect, Mr. Mayor and colleagues, I've changed my mind. Simply because this is all uncontroversial, indeed good stuff. In other words, seeking improvements which most people would be happy with. So I think it'd be more sensible to have the full initiative and for any of us to respond as individuals.
Well, it sounds as if it might be relatively difficult to respond as a council on the basis that the consultation ends before our next meeting. And I doubt we're in a position to form any great views today. I must admit, I'm not well enough informed on it to take a view. Although, in principle, anything that extends accessibility to those who have disabilities sounds like a good idea, as Councillor Lightwood said. Does anybody have any views, as it were, from an OTC perspective? I'm certainly quite happy that councillors respond in their own right. They could respond as councillors, but they shouldn't be intimating that it's a response on behalf of the council if they do that. And secondly, I suppose, whether you have any views as to whether or not, from the sort of staffing angle, there is anything we could or should be doing about it.
Well, actually, can I chip in, please? We're only at the consultation stage. We won't need to give our minds to staffing indications for us until all the responses have gone in by 6th October and governments have decided precisely what they're going to do. Then there will no doubt be a circular saying, please do this. And then we can decide what the implications are. Because I think Tom will have to take it to Secretary of State. And Secretary of State will probably have to clear it with Cabinet.
Any more to say on it from now? In which case, thank you for bringing it to our attention, and no doubt we'll be following it closely and bringing it back
Indeed.
as and when. Right. To agree two representatives to attend the Northants CALC annual conference. Can you remind us of the date?
Yeah, it is the 7th of October.
I forgot to print that bit off. Is that at Hunsbury Hill? Or is
It's at Malton. Hang on,
Oh,
let me just double check. I think it's at Malton Community Centre. That's where it's been for the last few years. Yes, it is. I normally go, but I'm away, so I can't.
I normally go, but I'm away.
I'm in Croatia.
I'm working. Sorry. And I'm actually away as well, so, yeah. Well, if there's any town councillors who aren't away on that particular Saturday who are keen to go, Councillor White.
I'm happy to go, but I need some help in preparing a case study up to 200 words on the various things that they ask for a speaker to present on. So highways, planning, civic events.
You don't have to do that.
You don't.
Good.
But if you
There is
do
some-
enter
if there is something that we want to.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, if I could say, if I could say, having been to them, my advice is just what I said to you before. Listen, just go with listening ears and meet people and get to know people. And you don't have to do that.
I was asking whether the council wanted anything promoting, but if not, then.
No, I think at this stage, you don't know much about it, so just enjoy it.
Well, you will have to be at our voting.
Sorry?
You will have to vote on our
Yes.
behalf.
Yes, so
But anybody that we put forward, we will trust enough to vote in a way that we think we will approve of, because we can't sit here now and spend the next 20 minutes figuring out how we're going to vote. a whole range of issues that we may not even be aware of.
And I've just got one other thing, the closing date to register was tonight. So, but I will get it in first thing tomorrow. I'm sure there should be.
No, they have to do it.
Do we know anyone in that
I'm also free that Saturday morning, if you want somebody to share the night.
Share the right, and share the responsibility.
I've been along to them before, and they're usually worth going to, actually.
Yeah.
So, yes, it would be great if you could go and report back to us, having done so. So perhaps, Emma, if you could put
Yeah.
all councillors Shura and Wade as representatives, and I cannot believe they'll turn around and say you're too late.
I hope not, yeah.
But if they do, they do.
No, they won't.
The next one is simply to receive a report, and bearing in mind what else we've got on this agenda.
Just
If
receive
it merely says that you're receiving it,
Yeah.
then I propose to just move on. Next one is feedback and suggestions regarding the community minibus trials over August and in the future. Councillor Clark, I'm sure that that's a little bit more.
It is. I was wondering whether I should talk about this as part of the transport thing,
Or you could combine the two.
just to save the time.
Yeah, combine the two.
Oh,
Sorry, I was, well, I thought you were getting something on your scene.
No,
Well,
I thought we were going to talk about it later on. Okay, I'll do it all now.
well, yeah, let's do it all now.
Do it all now. Okay, so the transport report, which deals with community transport, you've got a copy there. I was away in July and some comments were made about format and stuff, so I've stuck it all on Teams and people have had a view and I've changed it all around, so what you see in front of you is, I hope, vaguely in an agreement with what most people are keen on seeing. The message is we don't really have any power to do very much anyhow. So this is simply a vehicle to get data out there. And the sooner we get it out, I think the better it is for us. The longer we sit on it, the worse it is, because it'll be 2 years, it'll be coming out of date. I think the other thing is we can put it out as a report and then effectively add another version in 6 months and 6 months and start growth cycles and so on within it. So that's the first thing, is we're broadly happy with those views, the recommendations at the top, that we looked at the 20 mile an hour zone in town. I know North Northants Highways are looking at 20 mile an hour signs. They've been doing it for a year. At the moment, they haven't got the design finished. They haven't got any costings, they haven't got them printed. Meanwhile, the Business Association have got 2 or 3 people who are desperate to spend some money on buying some signs, and they're getting frustrated that I keep saying, let's wait until we've approved it, etc. We've got people that would like to put some voluntary signs up. Highways are broadly happy with us doing that until theirs are made, and then we'll have lots more signs. So, you know, that's something we could probably jump on with fairly soon. A second speed sign is something that, if it was grant funding particularly, would be of no problem to us, and as the speed report shows, there's lots of good and bad news about that. And then we move into areas of sort of cycling, pedestrian activity, looking at car parking, which we're doing anyhow, and looking at community transport, which we're doing anyhow. And then the other bigger change is we need support from North Northants, but until we approve this, we can't be sitting for and ask for that help. So that's the first thing. The second thing about community minibuses is you're going to leaflet from this. This is a guy who runs a community minibus service down in Rushton, the villages, down towards Northampton. He came up and saw us. With his permission, I borrowed a minibus from our school, drove some old people around. I told them to get on and off as slowly as possible to do timing trials around the town. They were relatively well behaved. We also went out to Barnwell, because the only other parish council that got back to Carr, which is his name, ironically, was Barnwell. And the idea of doing a little loop around town and connecting to Barnwell village and coming back into town on market days and things like that got him quite excited. At the moment, one of his vehicles is free on a Thursday. But if you wanted to do something more permanent up here, we would look to get a second vehicle and probably park it here, get one or two local drivers and run a bus service up in the north of the county, maybe linking with Truxton, maybe X47 down through Rushden, etc. This is all ideas, he's very keen, money's a little bit unsure, a lot of it comes from Northants, a lot of it comes from bus passes, etc. But he's very keen to at least try and see if things might work, and he's keen to offer us at least one trial on a Thursday, probably in November, whereby he'd bring one of his minibuses up, we could advertise it, he'd drive a service around, talk to people, see what's what. His minibus is all legal and approved, and quite nicely, we've seen the Uppingham minibus work. They were a normal heavy sliding door minibus, and I've now proved that 80-year-olds have trouble with sliding doors in minibuses. His is converted so the front passenger door opens, the driver can open it, and people can step on it, curb on it. And actually that's a really good thing to have. So anyhow, that's the community transport idea, and if we're happy with him finding a date in November, which we could maybe approve in October, he'd be keen for us to get involved. So there's sort of two halves of the same walnut, really, the transport for Wishing community transport, and then the idea of a trial in November. That's the short version.
Thank you. Right. Now, looking at the agenda, it says to receive the report and agree next steps, and perhaps agree entirely with Councillor Clark. If we leave this lying around much longer, its impact will start to diminish. And we have this idea that we should be making it available to the planning authority and saying, look, we've got this data that you should be factoring into planning applications now, and we can refer to it when we respond to planning applications, and we can use it as leverage, I hope, to try and move forward with some of these things. Even though progress seems remarkably slow, how it can take so long to sort out the 20-mile-an-hour signs. I can remember sitting with Philip Ants, now it must be a good 2 or 3 months ago, discussing these things, and to be told they're still having worked out the design. You know, how complicated is it? Is it 2 and a 0? Yeah.
It's not.
So,
It's ridiculous.
I know there were 1 or 2 issues and reservations about the report, and nobody will be entirely happy with what it says or how it's presented. But I think we have to make a decision tonight about whether we accept this report and start to push it or not.
Yep.
So from the chair, I'd like to propose that we adopt the working party's report and we publish this transport study at the earliest opportunity.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Fuller. All those in favour? This appears to be.
I was just trying to get my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Well,
Sorry.
even though we've taken the vote,
It
I'll
just
take
needs
the
a little
vote.
bit more editing, I'm afraid. And I'm happy to work with Ian to do that. It's not to change the substance.
No, if you just give me specifics, that's fine, because I got to the point where all the comments that people
Yeah.
made were
The
dealt with.
substance I don't want to change, but I think there's an issue with some of the presentation, I think.
That's fine, no, as soon as possible, let me know.
Absolutely.
Or to thank Councillor Clark for how
Yeah.
he's done pushing us forward.
Absolutely.
Pleasure, thank you.
Taking up the man.
Please minute that. Now, the second thing is this rather interesting minibus idea. And at the moment, it sounds like just the sort of thing we should be looking at. And if we get the opportunity to dip in effectively free of charge, it seems to me to be a win-win. And so, I think it's back on the agenda for October. I think you're suggesting we might have a bit more views.
Yeah, if we say we're keen, they can give us a date, and then we can approve the date, I suppose. And take things from there.
So are you happy that as a council we indicate our interest in this and our wish to participate in the trial operation?
I said, yeah.
If I propose that we do that,
I'll second.
seconded by councillor Clark, all those in favour of that?
No, Glenn.
Again, unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, boys, it's an odd way of working through tonight,
Sorry, yeah.
but things just seem to link. However, we'll take all the financial matters now. So the first item of financial nature is simply to approve the bank reconciliation balance sheet of the budget for July and August. It literally just requires approval. So I'm happy to propose that we do. It wasn't just a tie, button, so it's raised by fraction. Councillor Clark, all those in favour of that? Payments for July and August, two propositions. First being the schedule of payments for July 23 are retrospectively approved. I propose that. Seconded by Councillor Clark, all those in favour of that? That's helpful, since it was retrospective. And secondly, to propose that the schedule of payments for August 2023 is presented are paid. Is there any queries on that? Is that a query or a second? A second. All those in favour? Right. To consider a quote for cyber security for OTC. I'm not sure if I'm looking at Emma or somebody else.
Yes, quite a while ago, at our council meeting, you asked me to look into this. And I know it has taken a little while, but I have looked into it and I did get a quote. It's quite an interesting conversation. I mean, you can pay huge amounts of money. I mean, big corporations pay a lot for this. But the guy that I spoke to, who works for our insurance company, however, the quote is from another company that they use, he said that, I mean, if you read it, it's like we get £100,000 worth of, like, if anything happened, you'd have £100,000 worth of experts coming along and sorting out your problems. And he did seem to think that that would be a good start, because there's a lot of things that the company would also be monitoring. He said you get a lot of monitoring with that. So that's the quote. I think it's about £800.
Councillor Hutton.
I have a couple of questions and clarifications. It seems like quite a lot of money. There didn't seem to be many issues raised that they were going to fix. Have we discussed this with Blue Moon?
Yes.
And what do they think?
Yeah, they looked at it. They had a couple of queries that had been raised with, I think, the medium risk. I think they had about three things. A couple were low, a couple were related to, I think, an email account, but I couldn't access it. So I have gone back to the guy that I've been speaking to, saying I can't access this through your website. So I don't know what it is. So there's a couple of things like that. But yeah, I mean, they said there's obviously not much risk, and we are a low risk organisation.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the question I had was, one of the things that, the only thing I really in that report I thought was significant was this thing about being able to fish using the inlet. We know what's happened in the past.
Yeah, we can.
And they seem to think, they seem to say they can fix that.
Yeah.
I couldn't we just get Blue Moon to fix it for something less than £800 quid?
Three things actually. One, just a direct response to Councillor Hutton. I've been involved with a cybersecurity issue and £100,000. So for me, the question is not, is it too much? The question is it enough? Because you'll spend that kind of money very, very quickly. But the points I wanted to make was first of all, we do seem to be in very, very good shape. So I think we should be congratulated for the security that they put in place. And I think that's reflected in the low premium. The data breaches that have been identified, if they're real, have those been reported to the ICO?
Have they been reported?
To the Information Commissioner's Office.
No, they haven't.
It might be worth checking whether they should.
Okay.
be. I haven't seen that we're registered with the ICO, but I can guess that we are. I think the premium is easily affordable, and I would normally look for comparative quotes, but I think the 800 quid is highly worth it. So if we're satisfied that the 100,000 is enough, I'd be supportive of it and would be happy to propose that we spend the money.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I agree. As you all know, we all use the internet, we rely on it, we're now online, all our data is now available, it's not secure in a building. So, you know, they say that when you buy a computer within 30 seconds, it's infected by something. And so we have to be aware, it's just like putting locks on the door.
Yeah.
And so, how do we secure Flame House? Just put this into your thing. We do have some security, we have the Office 365, but that can be cracked. To be honest, you can't stop. If somebody wanted to hack into our accounts, there's nothing you can do to stop it. But that takes a lot of effort from their part to do it. So the harder you make it, the less chance you have. So I'm fully behind Councillor Wade. I think, £800, it is quite, I looked at it first and I was going, it's quite a lot. But then it's that risk thing. I mean, Councillor Clark referred earlier to another matter where we're talking about risk. It was to do with the electricity. And we're more risk averse than we used to be. And I think in terms of the cyber world, we have to be, and the data we have to be really protected. Because the fines the ICO can give us are pretty high. It's, well, I don't know how they do it on the councils, but it's a percentage of your...
It would be a long, long way before we got anything like fine, because there are a number of steps to go through, but nonetheless we should...
It's protecting us. It's locking the door.
It's the timing that's the problem.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of premium, the last organisation I worked for, before there was a problem, or the last organisation I worked for where there was a problem, before there was a problem, the premium was £8,000.
What was it like?
After the problem was 77,000.
Yeah, yes, because we've already been.
So, for me, it's a no-brainer just do it. I
Yeah.
wanted it done last October, I raised it last October, I think we should just go ahead. £800 is nothing, what do you think it costs us?
Councillor Shirley.
Yes, I agree that it's good value for money, realistically, given the potential risk factors involved. I'd put it another way, if we were discussing putting an alarm on the front door of this building at £800, we wouldn't question it, and I don't think we should question this.
So we,
It's just me that it doesn't. I'm sorry, actually, I don't think the risk justifies the current expenditure.
You haven't heard from everybody else. Does anybody else have anything to contribute? Councillor Clark.
Just one question, I don't even know I know if the answer exists, but are we covered on our normal insurance in any way, shape?
No.
No, not at all.
answer that.
Yeah, this is going through our insurance. They've told me about it, and that's what was raised when they sent our insurance quote
And
through.
our insurance each year is about 15,000, is that right?
Yes, it's, yeah,
So there's now 15,000.
and 800.
If I could just add one more. We do pay for a lot of services, for physical things like auditors, accounts, and so when you've got an IT system, there are costs that you have to, that come associated with it. And one of them is the fact that you keep it secure. So
That's what we pay for them to do.
well, no, but that's not to do with this issue. And the issue is, it is to do with alarms and stuff like that. I do firmly believe that this is the right course of action. It's recommended by Blooming, and you tend to listen because, you know, my boss had a, you know, each of us can talk about a hack. I got a hack. I mean, I had this thing, but they emailed me. They thought it was Councillor Hutton. I went and spent £180 on, actually it was £360 on iTunes vouchers. And so I've been called out by it. And I'm supposed to be an IT person. So if they can catch me out, that should be a story for everybody else. And £360 is a lot of money that I haven't got back.
Take Councillor Wade, and I think we need to
move on.
Make a decision.
Just in support of what's been said. The technology is secured through Blue. They've done a good job, we recognise that. That technical aspect is not the issue. We're the issue. 80% of breaches come through individuals clicking on links they shouldn't click on, answering emails they shouldn't answer. Social engineering emails and phishing and phishing are just rife. And so the technology is not the problem, people are the problem.
Councillor, I think you proposed it earlier. Yes. Can I ask somebody to second it, Councillor Fuller? So the proposition is that we accept this quote. All those in favour, please indicate. 6, 7.
Got seven.
I'm going to abstain for ignorance.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 7 in
I think
favour.
it was 7 for those against.
That's
One
easier.
and
2 abstentions,
2
I think.
abstentions, so our proposition is carried.
I'll just, yeah, there we go.
Right, to approve the quote for the renewal of the outdoor walking tour app. I've seen loads of emails that are behind.
This is something that we started with some post-COVID grant money, as I recall. It was a something from NNC.
It was something, wasn't it? It was some
So
grant
we
money,
started
yeah.
it, the OBA were very keen on it, we got a walking app, there's a really awful version of me doing the history one, but in my bedroom. There's another one about trees. It hasn't had a great deal of use, I think there's been 10 downloads, I might be at 10, I don't think I am. But
I've got one.
I've got one, yeah, lots of people. But having said that, this summer, on Thursday, I've got 2 Canadian cousins landing, and they listened to it last time they were here, and they want to listen to it again. So but this summer I was looking to go and record a walking tour, but some points of interest in the cemetery, because we've got some interesting walkways there. I thought that for November might be a good idea. We've got the blue plaque thing coming around, it's just coming in the end kind of thing. So we've got some interesting buildings. There's lots of things we could do, and we could push it through November better. So I suppose there's a decision. Do we say it didn't really take off, kill it now? Or do we say we'll back it for a bit? I don't know if this is for 3 years or forever.
That's a yearly, that's an annual cost, and if, I think you asked for any discount, and he said no.
So this, I suppose, would be, do we want to give it a push for another year, work with the museum and everything else, and really go for it this summer? And if it still doesn't work, and it's 11 downloads, then, yeah. But I don't know.
Councillor
Yeah, I'm totally ignorant of this. Before this meeting, I've never even heard of the Armwood Walking app, which itself maybe says something. I don't know quite what it does, and therefore I'm not entirely sure I know what to recommend. I mean, if it's something that I'm not sure who the we is, but we could have input into, is it something you listen to whilst you walk? If so, should we not be working with the Historical Society and the museum to provide context and I don't know. So I'm not.
No, it's fine. So you're on your phone, you go ba-dum, and through data, or you download the whole thing, you put your little headphones in, and as you walk around along West Street, my dulcet tones start up. Okay, reading something from a while ago, and you can do the tree one, and it takes you, go down here, and it picks up GPS, and it says you're here, and it starts playing the recording. And there's information on the app, etc. The idea was the walking tour finished at the museum. It has potential, it has possibilities.
It certainly sounds to me as though it has potential, but the potential can only be realised if we populate it with interesting information.
There wasn't a great deal of uptake on that, but this might be its second life, its resurrection, or its termination.
So I think we need support in developing it, but there's a question over there.
Right, Councillor for the first, and I think Councillor.
Yeah, I think we need to give it a chance. We've got an asset, okay? It costs money. We've had it free now, but it's going to cost a bit of money. But it's an asset, and I think if we're going to try and develop within the Commons Working Party a bit more, understanding of Oundle and what it means and everything else, then this is a project that we could help promote. But it is part of the Love Oundle thing anyway. But we should be promoting. I think we should give it a chance. But as Councillor Clark has already said, we give it another chance, and then it doesn't work after that. And we push it, we try and push it, and then we do what we're asked to do. Then I think we've given it the chance. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then it's not something that's popular. That's my view.
Councillor Wade.
So I was going to say exactly that, with the addition that somebody should own this, because when we own it, nobody's going to push it. I think the Commons Group, unless we own it, and we're not
You
a
could own it.
group, we don't own it, then it runs the risk of disappearing. That many towns have similar kind of walking tours, the ones that's been described. So I think we should have something, but we do need to push it, because this is half the premium we just spent 10 minutes talking about whether we should pay. So for a lot less actual value. So we need to push it. I don't know who owns it.
One other thing that just came to mind, there's a big event in October, the date I can't remember, where the archive school is working with
I
various
think it's the
people.
28th.
And they're also looking to start recording people's memories in town. So I suppose that data was able to be put on this, and then you started linking little stories up, etc. It could be that with the aim of the Christmas market, we advertise it there, food festival, we advertise it, etc., etc. So we start pushing out something that people can download up.
Yeah, you could do it in conjunction with the open gardens.
Sorry, but somebody needs to own it.
Councillor Gray.
Just very quickly, because I know we're busy tonight, but I've done a few of these walking tours in various places, and every one that I've done, it's kind of combined with almost like a scavenger hunt as well, or suggested to engage children. We often take our grandkids with us and do it, but they like an element of having to work something out. So if there could be, have a look behind, describe something, and then they have to, and that makes it interesting and keeps everyone engaged, including the adults. So I think something like that
Yeah, that's
could
great.
make it more desirable, and then obviously promote it.
The message that seems to be coming over is that we are happy with it in principle, but
How easy is it to upload?
Really easy.
And did
I
Rebecca
did
do it, or did you?
I recorded it, and
Rebecca did it, yeah.
We have control of it, so it's easy to do. Now it's all set up.
I think so long as if we can get the content, and I'm not saying that as staff we're going to be able to go out and get that content, but if people can give us content, then it possibly would be very straightforward for Rebecca to upload it.
Am I allowed to speak? I just have
yes, I'm
a very,
always willing to have a contribution to the floor
very
if
little
it's.
idea. I don't know whether there are any suitable groups, because I'm not involved in the historical one, but would the U3A be a possible source of
Yeah.
content?
Definitely.
Because I believe there are local history
There
groups.
are. And again, we've talked to them originally, but that was then, this is now, so, yeah, it's a good time, but exactly, it's a good time to re-ask the question. And that was before it was even vaguely operational, so now it exists.
I think that's the thing. Now it exists. It could be a big asset for a town that prides itself on being the tourist destination. So it seems to me that we should probably be back in this at least for the next year. I'll take one more comment to the
It's not covered, I just wanted to get the proposal, if I can, at this stage, which is that we support it for this year, subject to something on the council only leading it, taking responsibility for it. I don't care who that is.
I will volunteer to do that on the history.
intention of council starts bringing it, so you propose therefore that we do it for the next year. Seconded by councillor Bullock, all those in favour? Seems to be absolutely everybody. And the musical accompaniment. Right,
It's not so.
I rather suspect the next one is to involve slightly less discussion. We're being asked to approve a quote of £551 for a new laptop for the finance officer. My suggestion being that if the finance officer's laptop isn't working very well, it's as well we've got the insurance that we just decided to invest in.
Yeah, we could just replace the battery, but it's over 4 years old anyway. And at the moment, it holds no charge, so he has to be connected at all times. So
I'd like to propose that from the chair.
I'll second it.
Seconded. Councillor Fuller, all those in favour? That's everybody.
Can I just ask, what's going to happen with the old laptop?
I would like it to come into the office and be as an extra laptop for use, if that's okay, because quite often, sometimes people want to upload presentations, but if they just bring a USB, we're stuck. It is always handy to have another one.
Makes sense.
That makes sense.
Right, this one doesn't involve spending money, so that's good. To receive the internal control check for Q1, that is something to receive it, so if somebody's got any pressing issues with regard to it, I suggest that you note that we've received it and move on. This item was actually on our finance and general purposes agenda last Tuesday, which was to approve the receipt of the annual governance return for 2022-2023, conclusion of audit, and consider any actions. And in the minutes of the FMTP meeting, which I just happen to have here, hopefully it says somewhere. Well, the minute reads, the concluded AGAR was received, the letter regarding the change from except for to and other matters considered. It was agreed no further action was required. The letter has been published with the completed AGAR. That might actually sound quite difficult to follow. There was a technical error that we made because we misunderstood how the return was to be done, because they very unsportingly changed the wording from what we were used to. We got ourselves in a slight tangle. It's been untangled and undone. You don't need to do anything more. It's really just bringing it to your attention. But we do actually need to have a formal minute.
Yeah,
of the approval
and just
of
to
the
say we're
return,
not,
and to
have no
note
actions.
that we've taken on board what was said and addressed it. So can I propose from the chair that we do indeed approve it and note the action taken? Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Those in favour? Thank you. And finally, which was to receive the minutes of the meeting I just referred to. And I read a small bit of them. And that was simply to receive. So, conscious of the time, and actually we're now making a bit of progress. Highway matters. We've already looked at the transport study, but we do have the report from the speed indicator device. Mr. Clark, is there anything you want to comment on in relation to that?
No, the only thing which is of no great relevance, but we've been vexed month on month by these high-speed vehicles driving around in the middle of the day. And I saw a police car drive through town recently at high speed, and I saw an ambulance drive through at high speed, and I thought that could be the problem and the solution all in one, because you can probably get quite fast on Benfield Road if you really want to, when you've got lights flashing. So I suspect that's probably some of these options.
It's actually quite worrying in a way, because where that is sited, there are cars almost parked, nearly always parked,
Yeah.
kind of as you approach it, which means that you're going to have to be driving into the middle of the other side of the road, and doing that speed must be.
With flashing
You are,
lights.
but again, I've been taking my two sons to a police driving course at Silverstone this weekend, and they drove a police car with flashing lights on down a skid pad. 88 is nothing for a police car. These are Northants police drivers, and it was terrifying, sort of fun, but terrifying. So
It is what it is,
Yeah.
and it will all go into your traffic report.
I will update my God, month on month.
Anything further? No. Right, planning matters. Well, the first of those was to receive the minutes from the two meetings held on the 3rd of August and on the 5th of September. Bearing in mind time, unless anybody's got any questions in relation to either, I've simply received them and move on. The planning committee looked at the local planning part 2, which is the statutory replacement of the Rural North Arundel and Fraxton plan. The plan which of course they've already NC initially and NC subsequently. Sometimes, however, when you look at the modifications he seeks, they are matters of how to express something better. And it might along those lines. In other occasions, it's more significant. The things I highlighted in the report were that the plan allocates 3 sites for residential development in Arundel. We're now very familiar with those 3 sites. 2 of those have got planning permission before the inspector had even decided whether or not the plan incorporated a scenario which I still struggle to get my head around, and the 3rd site being the Stokeborough Road site. Interestingly enough, despite the fact that this council was extremely critical of the assessments that were undertaken by ENC that led to those 3 sites being allocated. And although there was considerable opposition in the town itself to the allocation of those sites, the inspector found that the methodology was fine, everything about it was fine, and he was perfectly happy with all 3. Mind you, what he would have said, if he said, well, no, the Crossestock Road site and the St Christopher's Drive site are awful, they should never be there, given the planning permission already existed, it wasn't going to happen, was it? OTC made some comments. It's nice to see occasionally indications that somebody has read what you wrote. So, for example, there was a little section which talked about the surrounding villages, and we picked up that it didn't mention Barnwell as surrounding Arundel. So we pointed that out. And into the inspector's required modifications was, you must incorporate reference to Barnwell. Perhaps the only really significant thing, looking to the longer term, I'm conscious of something we're going to be talking about later, related to sections in the report which talked about brownfield sites and specifically mentioned the East Road car park and or the recycling centre site. And as a town council, our submission had been that it should be made clear in the plan that the aspiration of the town council was that that site should remain a public asset and available for continued use as a car park. And happily, the inspector has said that those words should be included. He's not designating it as a car park that must remain a public asset, but it is recorded in the document that that is what OTC wants, which is certainly a starting point. Indeed, it may form an interesting argument in due course, because some councillors will know that in RNOGP, they identified the site of Crossestock Road, St Peter's Road, and the site to the rear of the cemetery as being possible sites for development residentially in the longer term, which was then taken as meaning the sites had been identified for allocation. And you could not stretch the meaning of what was written in the RNO2P to that, no matter what you did. But somehow they did it. And it struck me that we could say that that document recognises the need for that to remain public asset and control of the town council for use as a co-op. So it's trying to set the scene for a future battleground, perhaps. Anyway, there's nothing for us to do about that. I've simply brought it to your attention. I suspect the next main thing will be the plan will be adopted. That's going to happen towards the end of the year when they've worked through all of the modifications that the inspector says are needed to make the plan sound. But as soon as they're all done, it will be sound. It will become the new development plan. But as I said, they're already working on the next version of the plan, and I'm simply awaiting the next raft of consultations to get our teeth into all over again. So that's planning. Estates management, the minutes from the meeting held on the 25th of July, which seems a little way ago, was circulated. I'm just looking over at the chair. Is there anything to add?
So long ago, I actually can't remember. The talk, which I've not done, was it good?
They were great.
They were good.
They were great.
Good.
Very good.
Good.
Everyone enjoyed them.
I found it very useful.
Good.
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 Right. If there's nothing else, we'll move on. Now, councillors might have been baffled by the next heading. What is the Human Resources Committee, I hear you ask? Well, the answer is that we had a meeting of the Personnel Committee, and it was suggested that perhaps the term personnel is somewhat outdated. And the suggestion was that to move with the times, we should rename the committee the Human Resources Committee. And perhaps in compiling the agenda, the clerks slightly got ahead of the game because we haven't yet agreed that change. So just think of it as personnel committee matters. And then you'll receive the minutes from the meeting that was held on the 12th of September of what was then the personnel committee. But you'll notice that the next item says to approve the terms of reference for the Human Resources Committee, because that's what it's called under the new terms of reference. There aren't actually any other really significant changes. It is.
I think just
You
change
might
the
have
frequency of the
some
meetings.
Semantic.
Yeah.
But the other thing that we did look at was whether it met frequently enough, and we tweaked the wording to cater for that, so that what it now says, apart from saying that they should be scheduled in April, which is when we put the entire calendar of the year together, we've now said it should meet every quarter and shall have one combined meeting with the LNDP, which is what it's setting out. But it's usefully vague in as much as that could be your quarterly meeting, or it could be an additional meeting depending on what suits better. And it also makes the point that those meetings are not open to members of the public because we're discussing matters relating to paid members of staff. But that's what was recommended to full council by the committee itself, including the change of its name. So I'm happy to propose that we approve that. But before I do, Councillor Wade.
So, not teaching them to circulate, and I recognise that we've got HR experts on the committee. But if the committee comprises the town mayor and the deputy town mayor and the chair of the estates committee, any appeals procedure needs to exclude at least one of those people. Because somebody who is involved in any disciplinary procedure or grievance procedure must be separate so that they can hear an appeal. So presumably that's already in the policy. Is it?
I'm not
I
sure,
think if
because we're going to review all
I
the
can't
policies.
off the top of my head remember, but of course we do have separate grievance.
Yeah,
disciplinary
and I think it's
policies.
councillors.
I think I think the issue is dealt with in there. I have to confess, I can't remember how it is dealt with. But it is a worthwhile point making, and we'll look at it. And if there is an issue with that, we'll bring it back.
Yeah.
I mean, touch wood, it's been quite a significant period of time since we've had to go down that route at all. But as Sod's Law now says, if we're not careful, we need to do it.
Can I just say, I'm
Um,
sorry, say something. No, I was just going to say, Emma and I,
Oh, that's what I
I
was
mean,
going to say.
I was going to say, I haven't been here that long yet to have an opportunity to go through all of the current policies and procedures with Emma, but we're planning to do that as soon as we possibly can and make sure, you know, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed kind of thing. So,
Because that was one of the other things that we talked about. We're incredibly lucky to have Councillor Gray here because we have somebody with expertise in the area, and made a very good point that we should go through the policies. Some of them might be better combined, which might shorten them. Some of them may need revision. We may even discover an area where we haven't got a policy and perhaps we should have
yeah,
one.
absolutely.
We do have a fairly comprehensive list of policies, and I seem to remember I've got a booklet like that full of different policies and so many different things you wouldn't believe. But that's all going to be part of the process. So that the point you raised can be looked at. Is there?
So, if the member is there who would normally be involved in an appeal, I will apply for that same committee, so it's being looked at.
We'll make sure that there isn't a built-in problem. But I seem to recall there isn't, but I can't remember how it works off the top of my head. There was one other significant part in that.
Can I just quickly, I think it's a typo, but before we sort of accept the meeting minutes, it does say the meeting closed at 7:04 because of the nature, but then it says it opened again at 7:49. I think it should be 7:00. I know we weren't.
No, well, we closed as we started.
And then
If
we
you remember,
closed
we were
it.
completely closed and then we opened at the
Yeah.
end.
We closed.
Oh,
the
okay,
part
I
that is-
misinterpreted what that meant then.
Yeah.
I thought
We
it
went
meant,
into camera
yeah.
at 7:04, we
Yeah,
came
and then
out
I
and then
thought-
ended the meeting.
yes, gotcha,
And,
my
bec-
error,
and because of that, and because we don't admit the public,
yes,
none of that was put onto
Recorded.
YouTube, unlike tonight.
apologies.
And I'll be really encouraging if the three viewers are still watching this.
Yeah.
1.5 hours into tonight and we haven't quite got to the end. But then we're going to
We've got one.
My wife watches everything, she's watching now, so.
She's got the box set.
She's going to get excluded potentially in a minute, but anyway. So the remaining item.
Had you
You have to
proposed
approve
in
it.
terms of reference? Well, I
Oh,
didn't have
sorry,
a
I
seconder or a...
proposed it and then we got slightly sidetracked because Councillor Wade made a very good point about disciplinary procedures. So I proposed it, Councillor Fuller has seconded it. All those in favour? So we now have a Human Resources Committee and I'll try and remember that I've got to call it back in future. So, to approve the recommendation, which is the recommendation of that committee, to give staff an annual 1 point increment after the appraisals have been completed for expected or above performance. All staff contracts be updated to include the annual increase. The rationale behind the committee accepting this suggestion was really, as much as anything else, staff retention. It incentivises people to stay, certainly at least until the point at which they reach the top of the scale, which they can't go beyond. But the probability is that we can't go beyond it here. They couldn't go beyond it simply by moving to another council. I don't know whether, in essence, I need to say a great deal more about it, but Councillor...
Just one question is, how is performance
engaged.
Yeah, essentially.
Targets, in a sense, are set through
Yeah,
the
an appraisal
appraisals process.
Okay.
And of course, depending on the nature of the role, each person's target is specific to their particular role. Yes, I mean, ultimately, it's a somewhat subjective view, I suppose, because somebody has to appraise that person and come to a view about whether or not performance has been what it should be or better. I would say at that point that we've just completed a raft of appraisals, and I think they were uniformly good or better, which is a very encouraging thing to say. We've got a good staff and a good relationship with our staff, I hope. And this particular proposal, it's not like Andrew is suddenly striking out on his own and doing something entirely radical that nobody else has ever done or thought of. I'm not saying it's done in every council in Northamptonshire, but it is certainly done in a number of councils in Northamptonshire. And we felt that by adopting a similar policy, it kept us, if not ahead of the game, certainly up with the game. I don't know whether Councillor Gray would have had anything to that, because it
Well, I think,
originated from himself.
I think it's not so much retention, it's also attraction if we do have any vacancies. You know, and people know that there is that incremental system year on year, and that's separate to any cost of living increase that might also be given to individuals in local government. I just think it's there to be used. I think it's an incentive for people. We've caveated it with subject to satisfactory performance. So if people don't measure up, then basically there'll be a frank conversation in advance of any appraisal, annual appraisal, because as soon as there's an issue, one should be talking to staff members about it, supporting, developing, and giving them every opportunity to work at an optimum level. And if come the end of the year, for whatever reason, they're not meeting that, then they will not get the increment. Capability, standard.
Councillor Clement.
I was going to say that when we discussed it last week, the budgetary implication for this year would, I can't work out why, but there was an underspend on the salaries.
Yeah, and it's,
And it's below what we've already budgeted, so there's no huge implication. And because each year's increments are capped by the overall scale, I think we had a forward look, so 5 years, it would be around 20,000 extra on the salary bill, if everyone kept going up, which is a chunk, but not a huge chunk.
Relative to the size of the overall budget. Again, just for the benefit of those who aren't aware, this council has very traditionally, if you like, linked itself to the, what I'm going to call the sort of statutory framework. So there are published grades, salaries that go with those grades, and bandings and so on. I mean, if you get the actual thing, it's quite complex to look at. You're sort of working away along it, a bit like a sort of logarithm table or something. All right, we're at grade X and we're in band B, but yes, there is going to be a financial implication over a period of time. But actually, Councillor Gray is right. I'm talking about it in terms of retention, because actually we have a full complement. But actually, we assume we're always going to have a full complement, and then we want to recruit, and we want to be seen as being an attractive employer, and it's one way, we think, of being able to do that. So that was the proposal that came forward from the committee. And since I've chaired the committee, I'll propose it, but I won't just yet, because Councillor Shaw.
I agree with everything that's already been said about development, support, encouragement, etc. Fully agree with that. I'm glad to hear that the budgetary thing has been looked at as well. I'm sure you've thought about this, but I just want to make sure that we have understood the kind of practicalities, and it goes back to what the Mayor's just said about this complicated matrix of grades and points and what have you. In that I wouldn't want us to promise something that we can't deliver, because presumably there must be a ceiling at some point.
There is,
There is.
a maximum for what that role is
Yeah.
worth, if you like,
So,
in terms
so
of job value.
it's, so
Yeah,
it's
it's like a maximum
in a
value.
sense,
Yeah, it's a band.
this recommendation needs to be slightly modified, because you can't therefore necessarily give somebody a point increment because they might have hit the ceiling.
Well, they wouldn't go above the ceiling,
That's my point.
yes, so they would just stay there
Yes, so you
and
can't
just get
give them-
any agreed cost of living.
Yes, so this is why this recommendation has to be amended, because you can't give them a 1 point increment according to a completed satisfactory appraisal if they're already at a ceiling point.
But I think we said somewhere, didn't we?
Yeah,
That it would
but
be
We
subject
did
to.
discuss that, but I
Yes.
mean, Councillor Shore is right.
Yeah.
Having discussed
Yes.
it, it isn't
It is
actually in that word.
Absolutely.
That must be right.
It's about its practicality, and you don't want to give people, what I'm trying to say is don't give people false hope.
Yeah.
You're
But is there
right.
anybody on the topic of
Yeah,
that?
not at the moment, but
No.
what you can do is if, obviously Councillor Chapel has proposed this, it will be, and it's seconded, that can be written. It was approved
Yeah,
that staff would get an annual 1 point increase up to the top of the
Yeah.
band that they're in.
And I'm fully supportive of that, I don't want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
agree something that gives people a kind of false
Absolutely.
expectation.
yeah.
But then they will be told that, and they will be told
Yeah.
in their band
Yeah.
what their final level will be.
I think that's right, and I think we're right, in that I would accept that as a proposition to amend this,
Mhm.
just simply to include those words, for the avoidance of doubt. We all know what we're going to do.
Mhm.
It doesn't impact adversely any member of staff.
Yeah.
A, because they're actually getting something they're not getting at the moment, but B, they can't go beyond the top anyway,
Yeah.
so it's not saying anything that is a problem.
Just one more thing, the other thing that was discussed was we were going to take the wording from the recommended NCALC bit for the contract, and that had in it what band or whatever you were on and the ceiling of it, so absolutely.
As long as we're starting very
Yeah,
So
soon.
the last sentence talking about staff contracts to be updated, etc., so it'd be in there as well, so it should be perfectly clear. So with that revision, I propose that we adopt the recommendation of the committee for the annual 1 point increment. I won't read that whole thing out, we're very familiar with it by now. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Fuller, I think, just Councillor Chester. All those in favour? It is absolutely everybody.
Just, can I just add one final thing? Obviously, there'll need to be some kind of communication strategy with Emma and the team, because at the moment, they won't know anything about it. Well, unless they're watching tonight, but I don't know what.
That they will all receive a letter,
Yeah.
will explain it.
With update wording for the contract.
They might all
Yeah.
have read the agenda, so they're probably
See that.
not come as a surprise to them. What would have come as a very nasty surprise, I suppose, is if that item had appeared on the agenda and had not. But happily, I don't have to deal with that, so I'll move swiftly on.
Votes against it. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
We'll move swiftly on to the communication working party and then swiftly past it, because it's got nothing to report. Unless any member of the working party is desperate to say something. Correspondence for information, it's simply the employment law updates for the last couple of months, which we get through our HR external advisor, as opposed to our new internal one. Pursuant to Standing Order 3C, I move that in view of the special and/or confidential nature of the business about to be transacted, it is advisable in the public interest the public be temporarily excluded, and they are instructed to withdraw.
Aye.
Sorry.
Almost.
Well, I haven't actually got a seconder for that yet.
I'll second
it. Everybody. All those in favour? Sorry.
Thank you for staying.
Don't take it. You should win an award.
Don't forget to turn YouTube off.